What is confirmation bias? Do you think you're always right, or are you really just good at ignoring when you're wrong? Here in this podcast, you can discover the hidden psychological trap that is sabotaging your decisions. This episode reveals why "yeah, but" might be the most dangerous phrase in your vocabulary. Welcome again to Peace Unplugged. In today's episode, we're diving deep into one of the most pervasive decisions we make. That's called confirmation bias. I decided on this subject after one of those long and meaningful conversations with a friend of mine at the pub. We sometimes have differing opinions. However, we remain firm friends and we have mutual respect. And I have to say this occurs with a number of friends I have. Whether you're scrolling through social media, making business decisions, or arguing with a partner, our brain is secretly filtering reality just to try to prove that we are right. So in this podcast, I'm going to share with you 5 real-world examples that are backed by scientific research. It'll make you question every "yeah, but" that's ever left your mouth. By the end, you'll understand why the smartest people aren't the ones that know the most. They're the ones who know how to change their mind. So let's look at the science behind confirmation bias. I'm going to start with some fundamentals. Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. Let's face it, we all like a bit of certainty, don't we? It's like wearing glasses that let you see only what you want to see. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't just about being stubborn. 1960, psychologist Peter Wasson conducted his famous 2-4-6 task experiment. He asked participants to discover a rule by testing number sequences. The rule was simply any ascending numbers. But participants kept testing sequences that confirmed their initial hypothesis, rather than trying to disprove it. A staggering 80% of participants expressed high confidence in incorrect rules. Think about that. 8 out of 10 people were confidently wrong. That's because they were looking at evidence that supported their first guess. Our brain does this automatically. It does it without permission, and it also does it thousands of times per day. Now, here's the insight that changes everything. Awareness is the first step to wisdom. Research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that simply understanding confirmation bias can reduce its effect by up to 30%. When you know your brain is playing tricks on you, you can catch yourself mid-thought and ask, what am I not seeing? Now let's look at the "yeah, but" trap. Let's talk about that verbal signature of confirmation bias. Yeah, but I bet some of you are already realizing that you're saying "yeah, but" in your mind right as you're watching this, as I'm reading it to you. How often have you noticed "yeah, but" come up in conversations that you have with people? Someone presents evidence, a new perspective, or some constructive feedback, and what do? We quite often respond with "yeah, but." A 2018 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by researchers Emily Pronin and Matthew B. Kugler found that people are significantly better at recognizing bias in others than in themselves. That's a phenomenon they termed bias blind spot. When we say "yeah, but," we're essentially saying, I heard you, but I'm going to disregard what you said because it doesn't fit my narrative. This creates a devastating feedback loop. We reject contradicting information, which then reinforces our existing beliefs, and that makes us more resistant to future contradictions. Our worldview then becomes increasingly rigid, while we believe we're just being rational. Okay, so what's the solution? How about replacing "yeah, but" with "and"? Help me understand. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset reveals that people who approach disagreements with curiosity rather than defensiveness show 40% better problem-solving outcomes. When we truly listen, not just wait for our turn to speak, we open the door to genuine learning. Here's a very modern issue: social media and the echo chamber effect. This is where confirmation bias thrives. It's on the social media platforms. Every time we like, share, or comment, what we're doing is we're training the algorithms to show more of what we already agree with. A landmark 2016 study by researchers at MIT, analysing 376 million Facebook users, found that 70% of news consumption came from sources aligned with users' existing political views. I noticed this myself. It's an interesting paradox. By responding and commenting on subjects I don't necessarily agree with, simply tells the algorithm that whatever I said or whatever I commented at is worth promoting, regardless of my opinion. It seems to me this is very much how politics works on social media, i.e., there's no such thing in social media as bad publicity. You see, the Facebook algorithm wasn't creating an echo chamber. It's simply exploiting confirmation bias, and that already exists in human psychology. This is where things get truly dangerous. A 2020 study in Nature Human Behavior by Mohsen Mosleh, I think I pronounced that correctly, and his colleagues demonstrated that exposure to opposing views without context actually strengthened existing beliefs rather than changing them. Simply seeing contradictory information isn't enough. It can backfire. The wisdom here is nuanced. We need to actively seek diverse perspectives, but do so with intellectual humility. How about following people that disagree with you, but thoughtfully, not just loudly? Ask yourself, what would it take for me to change my mind on this? If the answer is nothing, you're not thinking, you're just defending your territory. Next, let's look at confirmation bias in a professional setting. Career success might depend on overcoming confirmation bias, whether hiring employees, launching products, or managing teams. This cognitive trap costs businesses billions annually. Research by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman revealed that investment professionals who were most confident in their predictions performed no better than random chance, and sometimes worse. In his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman described how financial experts consistently sought information confirming their investment thesis, whilst dismissing warning signs. A 2015 Harvard Business Review analysis found that 65% of failed businesses' strategies resulted from leaders ignoring contradictory data. These weren't stupid people making obvious mistakes. They were intelligent professionals who couldn't see beyond their own confirmation bias. Companies that institutionalize devil's advocate roles and pre-mortem analysis, that is, imagining a project has failed and working backwards to identify reasons, show 25% better strategic outcomes, according to research from the Wharton School. Growth in professional wisdom requires building systems that force you to consider alternatives, not just relying on willpower. So let's look at relationships and growth. Perhaps nowhere in confirmation bias is it more damaging than in personal relationships. Once we decide someone is unreliable, selfish, or critical, we'll then notice every behavior that confirms that viewpoint, and will simply overlook evidence to the contrary. Psychologist John Gottman's decades of relationship research found that contempt, viewing your partner through a negative lens, is the single biggest predictor of divorce. This is confirmation bias in action, seeing faults, remembering failures, and interpreting neutral actions negatively. A 2017 study in Psychological Science by Eli Finkel examined how people evaluate their romantic partners. Participants consistently rated their partner's behavior more negatively when primed to recall past conflicts, even when watching identical video footage of positive interactions. Our memories actively distort our present perception. Now here's an opportunity. Wisdom in relationships comes from what Gottman calls positive sentiment override. That's consciously choosing to interpret ambiguous behavior generously. This isn't just naive optimism, it's sophisticated emotional intelligence. When we actively look for evidence that contradicts our negative assumptions, we don't just see our partner differently, we change the entire relationship dynamic. Here's an example I use frequently when I used to work with clients when I was employed. This was clients trying to overcome some of their relationship problems. So, for instance, if one partner in the relationship says, "You always shout at me," it's almost certainly a lie. Let's face it, I can't imagine anybody starting a relationship with somebody when the first thing they do is shout aggressively at each other. The key here is the word always. An alternative word would be more accurate, could be frequently or sometimes. Research shows that couples who practice actively seeking genuine evidence report 60% higher relationship satisfaction. Now here's a challenging thought. True wisdom isn't about knowing more, it's about holding our beliefs more loosely. It's recognizing that the phrase, yeah, but, is often our ego defending itself, not our intellect analysing evidence. Consider this. If you're always right, you never learn. If you never learn, you never grow. If you never grow, you're slowly becoming obsolete. Rigid thoughts become brittle, and the beliefs become brittle to the point where they will finally break or crumble. Here's that famous quote attributed to the car maker Henry Ford. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're probably right. Most successful people, the deepest thinkers, best leaders, they're not the ones who are always right. They are, in fact, the ones that are comfortable with being wrong. They tend to actively seek disconfirming evidence, and they'll tend to approach it with genuine curiosity. You see, listening isn't a weakness. Changing our mind isn't a failure. Growth requires us to be wrong often enough to finally discover what is right. So let's look at 5 suggested solutions to combat confirmation bias. The steel man technique. Before arguing against a position, articulate the strongest possible version of it. This forces us to genuinely understand opposing viewpoints rather than dismissing straw man versions. Number 2, implement pre-commitment strategies. Before researching a topic, write down what evidence would change your mind. This prevents post hoc rationalization and holds us accountable to intellectual honesty. Number 3, diversify your information diet. Try actively following at least 3 sources that you regularly challenge your worldview. Set a calendar reminder to read them weekly, even when and especially when it's uncomfortable. Number 4, practice yeah and as a response. For 1 week, eliminate yeah but from your vocabulary. Replace it with yes and or help me understand. Then notice how this shifts conversations from arguments and debates to real dialogues. Finally, number 5, conduct personal red team exercises. Monthly, choose one strongly held belief and spend 30 minutes researching the best argument against it. The goal isn't to change your mind, it's to ensure you've earned the right to keep it. So there we are. Thank you again for listening into Peace Unplugged. If you've not already done so, then please subscribe for more material. There are 2 full podcasts per week. Bye for now.